They told Elara not to look at the baby, not to touch him, not to ask questions. She was only there because no one else wanted the job. A poor girl with borrowed shoes and tired eyes, hired to clean a private medical wing deep beneath the old castle, where the air smelled of metal and cold stone. The doctors had already decided. They said the vampire king's newborn heir was dead, that the heart had stopped, that the body was only waiting to be wrapped and removed. They spoke with confidence, with authority, with the kind of voices people believed without thinking. Elara lowered her head like she always did, swallowing the familiar sting of being invisible, and stepped closer to the small glass cradle to do what she had been ordered to do. The baby was impossibly small, pale as moonlight, his lashes resting softly against his cheeks as if he were only sleeping. Elara had seen death before. Life on the streets taught you that early. But something felt wrong. The room was silent except for the low hum of machines. Yet when she reached inside to lift the child, a strange warmth met her hands. Not the fading heat doctors talked about, but a living warmth, gentle and steady. Her breath caught. She pressed her fingers lightly against the baby's chest, her heart racing. Nothing. She waited. Then, so faint she almost doubted herself, she felt it. A slow, fragile pulse, like a whisper refusing to disappear. "You're still here," she murmured before she could stop herself, her voice shaking. Behind the glass walls of the chamber, a presence shifted. The vampire king had been watching from the shadows since the moment the doctors declared his son dead. He did not rage. He did not speak. He stood perfectly still, grief locked behind centuries of discipline, believing the verdict because believing was safer than hope. But when the girl leaned over the cradle instead of turning away, when she whispered to the child like he could hear her, something tightened in the king's chest. He felt it before he saw it, a pull he could not explain, as if the night itself had paused to listen. Elara ignored the rules then. She placed her palm flat against the baby's back and closed her eyes. She did not know why she did it. She only knew she could not walk away. She thought of all the times the world had decided she did not matter, all the moments she had been told to accept loss quietly. A warmth spread from her chest, down her arms, into her hands. The machines began to tremble. A sharp sound broke the silence, a single uneven beat flashing on the monitor. Gasps echoed from the doorway as doctors rushed back in, shouting that it was impossible, that the instruments were malfunctioning. Elara stepped back in fear, tears burning her eyes, convinced she had done something terribly wrong. The baby suddenly cried, a thin, piercing sound that cut through the room like lightning. His eyes opened, glowing an unnatural violet, bright and alive. At the same moment, the heavy doors burst open. The vampire king stepped into the light, his power filling the chamber, his gaze locked not on the doctors, but on the girl trembling beside his son. He crossed the room in a blur and looked down at the child breathing in the cradle. Then he looked at Elara, really looked at her, as if seeing her for the first time. "What did you do?" he asked quietly. Elara swallowed, barely able to meet his eyes. "I just didn't give up," she whispered. And in that moment, everything in the kingdom began to change. The room did not celebrate the miracle. It froze. The doctors backed away from the cradle, as if the baby's cry had burned them, their faces pale, their certainty shattered. Elara stood rooted to the floor, her hands trembling, suddenly aware of how small and out of place she looked among the shining machines and polished authority. The vampire king lifted his son from the cradle with a careful strength that contradicted his fearsome reputation. The child settled instantly against his chest, the glowing violet eyes dimming as if soothed by his father's presence. For a heartbeat, the king closed his eyes, pressing his forehead to the baby's soft hair, allowing himself one silent breath of relief before the weight of reality returned. "Everyone out," he said, his voice low and absolute. No one argued. The doctors fled the chamber, pride replaced by terror. When the doors shut, only the vampire king and Elara remained. The silence felt heavier than before. He turned to her slowly, studying her as though she were a riddle the world had failed to explain. "You were told the child was dead," he said. "Why did you touch him?" Elara swallowed, clutching the hem of her worn jacket. "Because no one else would," she answered honestly. "And because he wasn't finished yet." The king's eyes narrowed, not with anger, but with something like curiosity, sharpened by suspicion. News spread fast through the castle, carried by whispers and frightened glances. Servants muttered that a human girl had interfered with royal blood. Others claimed witchcraft. Guards were posted outside the chamber, not to protect Elara, but to contain her. She felt it immediately, the shift from ignored to dangerous. When an assistant brought a vial of medicine for the baby, Elara noticed the way his hands shook, the way his eyes avoided the vampire king's gaze. Her chest tightened. She stopped him. One sharp sniff was enough. "That's not medicine," she said, her voice firmer than she felt. "That's poison." The room erupted. The vampire king moved faster than thought, seizing the assistant before he could run. Under pressure, the truth spilled out. The council had ordered the child erased. A hybrid heir was considered a threat to balance, and declaring him dead had been the cleanest solution. The vampire king dismissed the traitor without mercy. But his fury did not touch Elara. Instead, he turned to her with an intensity that made her heart race. "You have become part of this, whether you wish it or not," he said. "My son responds only to you." As if on cue, the baby stirred and reached toward Elara, his small fingers curling instinctively around hers. The contact sent a faint warmth through her chest again, leaving her breathless. The king watched closely. "You will stay," he said, not as a request, but a command. "Under my protection." Elara's fear flared. "I don't want power or reward," she said quickly. "I just want to live." The vampire king studied her, then nodded once. "Then you will," he said. "But understand this. From this moment forward, the council will see you as a weakness." Outside the chamber, distant horns echoed through the castle walls, signaling an emergency gathering. The vampire king looked toward the sound, his jaw tightening. "They are coming to take what is mine," he said quietly. He looked back at Elara, his gaze steady. "And now they will have to go through you too." The journey to the council began before dawn, when the castle still slept under layers of mist and unease. Elara was dressed in borrowed clothes that fit her better than she expected, though she still felt like an intruder wearing them. The vampire king walked beside her, silent and composed, carrying his child close to his chest beneath a dark cloak. Servants bowed as they passed, but their eyes lingered on Elara with open fear and resentment. She felt every stare like a weight on her back, yet she kept moving, reminding herself that turning away had never saved her before. Whatever awaited them, the child's steady breathing against her arm told her she had chosen the right path. The council hall was a place of beauty designed to intimidate. Tall arches rose into shadow, lit by cold crystal light, and rows of ancient vampires watched from their seats, like statues carved from judgment. As soon as the vampire king entered, murmurs swept the room. The council leader stood, his expression carefully neutral, and announced that they had gathered to confirm a death and close a chapter. The vampire king said nothing. Instead, he stepped forward and revealed the baby, alive and alert. Shock rippled through the hall. Accusations followed immediately. Lies, manipulation, human interference. Elara felt the pressure in her head build as several vampires turned their gaze on her, their voices weaving together in a low, commanding hum meant to bend her will. She staggered, her vision blurring, but she did not fall. Somewhere deep inside, something resisted. The pressure slid off her thoughts, like water on stone. The room grew quiet as the council realized she was still standing. The vampire king moved closer without touching her, his presence shielding her in a way she could feel but not see. "She stands by my side," he said calmly, "and she will not be compelled." The council leader frowned. "That should be impossible," he said. Elara's heart pounded as she realized the truth was bigger than her kindness. There was something in her the council had not accounted for. A test was demanded. Proof that the child truly lived. Proof that he belonged. A silver instrument was brought forward, ancient and dangerous. Elara felt fear twist in her chest as the tool approached the baby. But before she could speak, the child's eyes opened wide, glowing brighter than before. The silver warped, bending and melting, as if it were nothing more than wax. Gasps echoed through the hall. A baby should not have that power. The council leader's composure cracked. "This child is no mistake," he whispered. "He is a king." The words carried both awe and fear, and Elara understood then that the danger had only deepened. The accusations turned toward her. Whispers spread that she was a witch, a weapon, a corruption. Elara felt the old familiar sting of judgment rise again, sharper now because of the stakes. She opened her mouth to defend herself, but the vampire king spoke first. He stepped in front of her, his voice carrying through the hall like thunder wrapped in silk. "You will not touch her," he said. "Her presence saved my son when your rules would have killed him." The council leader studied them both, eyes narrowing. "Protection is not enough," he said. "If she remains human, she will always be a vulnerability." Silence fell. Elara's breath caught as the vampire king turned to her, searching her face for fear, for regret. What he found instead was resolve. She nodded once, not knowing why she trusted him, only knowing she did. He faced the council again. "Then hear this," he declared. "She is not staff. She is not a servant. She is under my claim." The hall erupted in shock. The council leader slowly inclined his head. "Then she is untouchable," he said. Music resumed, conversations restarted, but the danger did not fade. As the vampire king guided Elara from the hall, she felt the weight of countless eyes following them. She did not know what the claim truly meant yet, but she knew one thing with certainty. Her life, like the child's, would never be simple again. They did not return to the castle after the council gathering. The vampire king ordered a change of route without explanation, and within an hour they were moving through the night toward an isolated stronghold carved into black cliffs above a restless sea. Elara watched the waves crash below as they entered, her arms aching slightly from holding the child, though she refused to hand him over. The baby slept peacefully against her chest, unaware that his existence had just rewritten ancient laws. Inside the fortress, the air felt different, warmer, quieter, as if the walls themselves were alive and listening. For the first time since everything began, Elara felt a fragile sense of safety, though it rested on uncertainty rather than peace. The vampire king did not sleep. He paced the wide chamber as Elara settled into a chair, exhaustion finally catching up to her. "The council will not forget tonight," he said, his voice calm but edged with tension. "They accepted my claim publicly, but privately they will look for another way." Elara nodded, stroking the baby's back. "They think I'm the problem," she said softly. "They always do." The king stopped pacing and looked at her. "They are afraid," he replied. "Fear makes monsters of those who believe they are righteous." His words surprised her. She had expected anger, Not understanding Dot later that night, answers began to surface. The Vampire King revealed what the Council had long hidden, that some humans carried rare traits that disrupted vampire control. Resistance to command, sensitivity to life itself. Elara listened in silence, pieces of her past clicking into place. The way people's voices never fully swayed her. The way she sensed the baby's heartbeat when machines failed. They call it resonance, he said quietly. A connection to life strong enough to anchor another soul. Elara's throat tightened. So that's why they want me gone, she whispered. He met her gaze. They want you used, he corrected. And then erased. The truth darkened quickly. A message arrived before dawn, delivered by a trembling guard. Human mercenaries had been sighted nearby, armed with weapons designed for capture, not killing. The Council had learned from past wars that humans were better at dealing with their own kind. Elara felt a cold fear settle in her stomach. They won't stop, she said. Not if I'm alive. The Vampire King's jaw tightened. They will stop, he said, because I will not let them take you. His certainty was absolute, but she could see the strain beneath it. Protecting her meant defying centuries of order. The attack came without warning. The lights flickered. The fortress trembled as alarms sounded through the halls. Elara clutched the baby as the Vampire King moved instantly, sealing doors, issuing commands. Smoke filled the corridors, and the sound of gunfire echoed against stone. Elara ran when he told her to, heart pounding, every step driven by one thought: survive for the child's sake. She nearly made it to the inner chamber when pain exploded through her side. Arms grabbed her from behind, rough and human. She screamed once before a hand covered her mouth. When she woke, the world was white and blinding. Cold metal pressed against her wrists, binding her to a table. Voices murmured beyond the glare, discussing her like equipment. They spoke of extraction, of harnessing resonance, of immortality purchased with stolen life. Elara closed her eyes, fighting panic, drawing strength from the memory of the baby's warmth. Somewhere far away, she felt it then, the same pull she had felt in the chamber where the child was declared dead. A faint thread connecting them, stretched but not broken. Tears slid down her temples as she realized the truth. Saving him once had bound them together, and if she wanted him to live again, she would have to do the impossible one more time. Even if it cost her everything. Elara drifted in and out of awareness as voices argued above her, their words sharp and clinical, stripped of any trace of humanity. Bright lights burned her eyes, and every movement sent pain through her body where restraints held her down. They spoke about her resonance as if it were a fuel source, something to be measured and drained. One of them laughed softly and said that the Vampire King would kneel once they proved she was replaceable. The sound filled Elara with a quiet fury. She had been replaceable her whole life, ignored and discarded, and yet here she was, the center of a war she never asked for. Somewhere beyond the cold walls of the facility, the Vampire King felt the pulse snap tight like a blade drawn across his chest. The bond was not magic in the way stories described it, but instinct, raw and undeniable. He felt his son's distress through Elara's fear, felt the life thread strain as if it were about to tear. The guards posted outside the stronghold never saw him coming. He moved through them like night itself, silent and absolute, leaving only broken weapons and stunned bodies behind. Rage burned through him, but it was controlled, shaped by one purpose alone. He was not there to punish. He was there to reclaim what was his. Back in the lab, the process began. A needle hovered above Elara's skin, humming faintly with energy designed to draw life itself. Panic surged, but she forced herself to breathe, focusing inward instead of outward. She remembered the baby's heartbeat beneath her palm, the way warmth had answered warmth. She realized then that resonance was not something taken. It was something given. When the needle pierced her skin, pain exploded through her, and the room flickered. Alarms screamed as readings spiked beyond control. Elara screamed too, not in fear, but in defiance, pushing back with everything she had. The walls shook. The lights shattered. The vampire king tore through the facility doors, his presence crushing the air from the room. The scientists froze, caught between terror and disbelief. He crossed the space in seconds, ripping restraints from Elara's wrists and pulling her against his chest. Her strength was fading fast, her skin cold, her breath shallow. "Stay with me," he said, his voice low and urgent, nothing like the distant ruler the world feared. She looked up at him weakly. "The baby," she whispered. "He needs one more anchor." His grip tightened as understanding struck. "No," he said. "You have already given enough." But Elara shook her head, summoning the last of her resolve. "Not enough," she replied. "Not yet." Through the bond, she reached for the child again, pouring warmth into the thread that connected them. The energy surged, knocking everyone in the room backward. Somewhere far away, the baby cried once, and settled, his life force stabilizing, stronger than before. Elara slumped against the vampire king, her body going limp. For a terrifying moment, he thought he had lost her. He pressed his forehead to hers, breathing in slowly, grounding her with his presence. "You will not die," he said fiercely. "I forbid it." Slowly, painfully, her chest rose. A shallow breath, but a living one. The survivors were dragged into the light, their crimes exposed before they could twist the truth. Evidence streamed across the networks by the Vampire King's command, revealing the Council's secret orders and the experiment meant to steal immortality. Public outrage spread faster than fear. The Council fractured under the weight of its own corruption. As dawn broke, Elara lay resting in the stronghold once more, weak but alive. The Vampire King sat beside her, holding his son, watching her sleep. For the first time in centuries, he understood that true power was not domination or control. It was the courage to protect the fragile, and the humility to admit that without a poor human girl who refused to give up, his kingdom would have lost its future. The world did not end in fire or blood the way everyone expected. It ended in truth. By the time Elara woke again, the stronghold was quiet, the kind of silence that followed storms rather than death. Sunlight filtered through high windows, muted by ancient glass, and the sound of waves reminded her that she was still alive. Her body felt fragile, as if every breath had to be chosen, but warmth surrounded her. The baby slept nearby, peaceful and strong, his chest rising with steady confidence. When he sensed her stirring, his eyes opened and fixed on her, glowing softly. The sight filled her with a quiet joy that hurt almost as much as the pain had before. The Vampire King was there, seated close enough that she could feel his presence even before she saw him. He did not speak at first. He simply watched her, as if afraid she might fade again if he looked away. When she tried to sit up, he reached out instinctively, steadying her without pulling her closer than she wished. "You saved him," he said at last, his voice calm but weighted with meaning. "Twice." Elara shook her head weakly. "I just didn't let go," she replied. The corner of his mouth curved slightly, not quite a smile, but something gentler. "That is rarer than power," he said. The fallout was swift and unavoidable. The Council's secrets spread across both human and vampire circles, unraveling centuries of carefully maintained lies. Those who had ordered the child's death were stripped of authority, their titles meaningless in the face of evidence and outrage. The experiment meant to steal Elara's life became a symbol of everything the old order had done wrong. For the first time, vampires were forced to confront the truth that survival built on cruelty was not strength. The vampire king stood before what remained of the council and made it clear that there would be no return to silence. Any future built under his rule would be one of accountability, or it would not stand at all. Elara listened from a distance as the world reshaped itself around her, feeling strangely separate from it all. She was still human, still vulnerable, still carrying the scars of a life spent being overlooked. Yet everything had changed. Servants now bowed when she passed, unsure whether to fear her or honor her. She avoided their eyes, uncomfortable with attention, until the vampire king spoke to her privately. "You do not owe anyone spectacle," he said. "Only truth." His words settled something inside her, easing the weight she had been carrying since the night in the chamber. The baby grew stronger each day, his laughter echoing through halls that had once known only discipline and cold respect. He reached for Elara constantly, recognizing her not as a servant, but as something essential. The vampire king watched those moments closely, learning in silence. Love, he realized, did not announce itself. It proved itself through presence, through patience, through the willingness to stand still when walking away would be easier. He never pressed Elara for answers or promises. He simply stayed, protecting her space as fiercely as he protected his child. When Elara finally regained her strength, she stood with him on the cliff, overlooking the sea, the wind tugging at her hair. "What happens now?" she asked. He considered the horizon before answering. "Now we build something better," he said. "Not because tradition demands it, but because kindness does." She met his gaze then, seeing not a monster or a ruler, but a man learning how to be more. She nodded once, accepting the uncertainty. The world would remember the miracle as the night a dead heir lived. Elara would remember it differently. She would remember the moment she chose not to believe the voices that told her to step aside. In the end, justice did not come from vengeance, and power did not come from blood. It came from refusing to give up on life when it was easiest to let go. And that lesson, carried by a poor human girl and a child who should never have survived, became the foundation of a new future for an entire kingdom.